Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Nancy.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
This is Leslie Sabatini from the Oregon Department of Human Services Governor's Advocacy Office returning
Oh,
your call.
good. Yes. Thank you for calling me.
Sure.
Yeah, so I left a message with Ben Johnson and also with Misty. I'm not sure if you've already looked into, if you're calling me with information or without. Do you already know about my case or this specific?
Well, we talked in July.
I'm sorry, what's that?
We talked in July.
Oh, are you the same person I talked to before?
They were pulling archived records for you.
Yeah, so you're the same person I spoke with before then? From the Governor's Advocacy Office? Yeah, okay, hi. So yeah, I left a message like 10 days ago or 2 weeks ago or something, again, after getting the records. And so it's just a question I need answered. And this one specifically, my envelope came like ripped open from the mailbox. So, or I don't even know if it was taped shut. It didn't look like it was on purpose. It looked like, it was like a thick envelope. But anyway, so it only had certain papers in it, and I could read on the paper page 1 of 1, and then page 10 of 10, 10 of 11. So I was just wondering if those pages were missing, or if those, like if I got everything that was sent, or if something, fell out of the envelope. And if...
Well, you're not going to get the full... You're not going to get the full everything because some things are confidential. So they redact records. So if you missed a page, it may be related to someone else that you're not entitled to have their information.
Okay, well, this is regarding my TADVS records. And so, I mean, what you're telling me does sound, to me, that doesn't seem like a reasonable answer. But my point...
I'm not trying to be reasonable. I'm telling you that records get redacted.
No. I'm sorry, ma'am. My point in telling you that is if a record is redacted, it means you're speaking about a black line that's, like they might remove a name or something. Right. That's redacted. I'm talking about I only receive certain pages. I can see that with the pages sent.
Okay, so let me email Ben Johnson and find out. So what pages again were missing? Okay,
so I apologize. If you could just give me a few more minutes. So I'm not, of course I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I'm just saying maybe even the information they sent me, because what it is just like she sent me a page 1 of 1, and then I can see it says page 10 of 10, 10, 11, or 10 of 13, 11 of 13, kind of like that. But there's no 1 through 10 type of pages. They're not in the record. So I don't know if those 10 pages included maybe like the information about the checks I did receive, or if there is actually 10 pages of information you are not sending me. Can you just be specific so I at least understand?
Okay, and who sent it to you, Ben?
I'm sorry, what's that?
Was it Ben Johnson?
This, actually someone named Misty is the person who actually sent me and Eugene.
Well, let me
but I am... Okay, but
to the bottom of who Misty is and email her, and then I'll let you know that I'm out for 2 weeks after the day, so I don't want to leave you hanging in this.
Okay.
I'll send an email to Misty and ask that she give you a call.
Well, I did. I also left her a message. Well, I left her a message 10 days ago, and then I left her a message over the weekend, so she might just not have heard her messages today, or something. You know what I mean? It's possible.
Well, that's 10 days ago, and you should have had some kind of
You're right.
This will prompt it.
You're right.
Do you have her last name?
Yeah, it's like something with the Mocesoe,
okay.
Something like that. Moses or something.
Okay, I'll see if I can locate her, and then it just gives a prompt.
Okay, and then I was just going to clarify that I am assigned to Cottage Grove. Ben Johnson is the manager, or, I think of, and so just to clarify of who he is.
Okay, I can look at the organization chart. So what I'll do is just kind of prompt her so it's on her radar, It's an extra little...
You know what? So, I do have another question. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, what's your question?
Oh, Actually, I was wondering about TADVS records. The woman I spoke with was very helpful and she answered a lot of questions. But the only question, I'm kind of left with is how do I explain this? So, the way the woman explained TADVS records to me at the time when I, got them was that it was kind of like supposed to mean something like and maybe I'm wrong. I'm just asking for clarification. I mean, I thought it would enter into the system. So say my documented abuser, because of the TADVS records, is constantly calling, caseworkers or whatever. My understanding was it would show up. Not that you wouldn't have to listen to what people have to say. That's not my point. But it would show back that this person also relates back to abusive record. You know what I mean? So it kind of would change the response of the caseworker. But I kept getting, for 10 years there were constant. I would be asked questions because someone made a report, but then nothing. It would always be unfounded. So I'm just. Can you kind of explain TADVS records and how they work a little bit more in that way?
Well, I'm not quite following. So if your abuser, there's a no contact order, it seems like they're shopping for information on their victim or the survivor. The system changes now since, historically there's been one system, and actually TADVS cases are coded in such a way where you can't access them until you click on an icon. But previous to that, it would have been in a track narrative situation. If anyone trained would be careful about abusers and perpetrators trained to seek information on their victims.
Okay, let me be a little bit more.
That's true.
Okay, so let me be a little bit more specific. So say,
Yeah.
like I get these records in 2012. I go to court and I have the records where he's like yelling at me in front of the judge in the courtroom in 2017. I report things. It's him taking her and not bringing her back, according to our parent plan. It's unfounded. The police won't do anything. So then this just keeps happening, and then 2019 or I think 2020 rolls around, and this happens again. But my question is, Megan, what's her name? Gillum, her last name, is the caseworker that came to my house after I tried to report this exact issue about him not bringing my daughter home during, according to the parenting plan. And my understanding at that point would be that she would understand that this is a history and that there's TADVS records, but there was appeared to be no record.
Law. So are you talking about child welfare, or are you talking about?
Okay, so that's my question. So if it's a TADVS record and that's about abuse, doesn't the case, when Megan Gillum came to my home?
I don't know who Megan Gillum is.
She's
that a child welfare worker?
Yes, she's a caseworker.
Okay, no. Self-sufficiency is not, because they're connected, but they're not one and the same.
Right, I understand what you're saying, and that's been explained to me several times, which I kind of disagree with you saying people don't communicate, because it seems to me people do communicate. But
I didn't say they don't communicate.
Okay, so
but they're different disciplines with different functions, so they do, but then they don't. So Megan Gillum probably doesn't have detailed access to self-sufficiency systems.
So you're explaining to me that as a victim and of having to get, on the program and having TADVS records, which is how it's been an issue, you're saying a person should never expect when a child welfare caseworker shows up at your house that they would ever have understanding or access to the history, the long history of the case of the TADVS records. They wouldn't that wouldn't be a part of the case?
It would not be detailed. It would be a collateral contact they need to make to get information if there's relevant information. But they're not, they're mutually exclusive. They're not in the same business, even though they may have the same clientele. So if child welfare gets assigned a case to investigate where domestic violence is prevalent, and they are made aware that there's a history with self-sufficiency, they would definitely want to communicate with self-sufficiency as a collateral resource, but they're not working together where it's just sharing information and all the details. They don't have access to self-sufficiency programs
Okay.
to see everything that's going on in a self-sufficiency case, and vice versa.
Okay. So, because this is actually what I thought happened, and you may be able to explain to me, no, I'm sure that didn't happen, or yes, that's possible. So, I assumed, and maybe you're going to tell me I'm really wrong. So, I got the TADBX records in 2012, which is a long time ago. I can agree. And I'm sure that your system, I know for sure your system has made many changes, since then. But when my case came along, where the caseworker was back to my house because of a complaint, another unfounded false complaint from my abuser, and which then led to abuses happening, my daughter not, past the legal time of being allowed to go to school, and I would report it, and it was unfounded. It was really, the responses were getting seemed, well, they weren't even according to Oregon state law, so it was very confusing for me, so, during this time. But my point in thinking, now that the system has been updated and you have a better system in 2020, I was shocked to see that there was no automatic, like if it's a when someone, and I realize this runs through, can run through, Salem. Say somebody makes a report through Salem, or the 1-800 number is what I'm trying to say. It's supposed to have a system in which it measures the, it. Yes, this would initiate a house call, or yes, this would not, type of thing. And so in your system, I was shocked to see that it doesn't automatically pull up something like a TADBS record for that, you know what I mean? And I assumed your system did function that way at that time. Is that not accurate? It doesn't work that way?
It's not accurate.
Okay.
They're two different functions, two different roles.
Uh-huh.
That would imply that aging and people with disability services, mental health and behavioral health services, and offices of developmental disability services too would all have systems that each other could look at. Because they're all serving a mutual customer.
Well, it almost sounds like what I'm hearing is that this system, which, I hate to have to say this, but obviously tax funded and stuff, it's meant to prevent abuse, but further abuses, for 10 years, abuses just kept happening and there was no prevention. And it seems like I'm being told there's all these systems in place that are supposed to be preventing things like a 10-year-long abuser not bringing back.
DHS employees are mandatory reporters.
Right.
For all vulnerable citizens, meaning children,
right,
elders, and people with disabilities.
Right.
Vulnerable citizens.
Exactly my point.
So any DHS employee, whether they're sitting at their desk or sitting at home, is a mandatory reporter.
I even consider myself a mandatory reporter, right, because of my training. So I said I myself consider myself a mandatory reporter just due to my training, through college and stuff. So yes, I can quite understand the necessity of being a mandatory reporter, which also, again, brings me to being more confused about how abuses could continue for so long with my case.
Well, I'm confused because we're kind of crossing over between a grant.
And I've made several reports all throughout those 10 years.
A grant that is in place for children to be protected when they have domestic violence in their home.
Well, okay, so maybe I could explain it to you like this. When the woman came to my house, and I gave her many details, which I documented because I was stunned at her the behavior of the whole situation. She said to me, you can go get a lawyer. And I thought, yeah, I know that. That's my right. You don't need to explain that to me. But it almost, to me, my interpretation, I just wish to say it like this. It was almost like the only children that don't get protected from abuse within your system are children that have lawyers. And I thought, I kind of thought that was your job as a caseworker, to collect accurate information and apply that, and that did not happen in my case. And I've been trying to report that for quite a while. And I've been reporting it for quite a while. This behavior that led to my rights not being followed and my child being abused.
So are you wanting, I thought you wanted your records from self-sufficiency. It sounds like you want your records from all of DHS.
From what?
And so you were referred back to a self-sufficiency office, and they're only going to provide you self-sufficiency records.
I'm not.
Go through
I'm sorry. What?
Records to get child welfare records.
No, I don't. They just said it was unfounded, so there's like no
You can
records.
still get records.
Well, yeah.
So they're going to be redacted, and you can look at what that worker Megan wrote about why it was unfounded.
So I do have those records, and what I see even in those records is extremely abusive. One, there's false reporting within that record, which is a crime. There's a ORS, law code for that, which I did report. Which I did report to the police officers.
Okay,
and
you broke that. Who falsely reported?
What's that?
So the employee from DHS falsely reported?
Someone from DHS reported that to a police officer?
Well, you said something about the crime about falsely reporting, so I'm trying to understand who falsely reported. Was it your
well, from the records, so from the most recent one where I didn't see my daughter, I had custody, but my daughter wasn't returned to me like she, like the parenting plan that was in the court was not followed, and I reported that several times, even to a police officer. I used the law code, whatever. I can't. There's a specific law code, and then I gave him the 163.245 and 163.257, which are the interference with first and second degree for custodial parenting interference. And so so I do have those records, and I'm as the governor's advocacy office, even those records I have about the case, his speech towards me, what he says, because it says it's, or I can tell by what is said that it's my ex-husband. It's very abusive. The things that you can see within the report that it's kind of. I'm sorry, what?
The police report?
No, I'm speaking clearly or specifically about the DHS records that have to do with the call and the report and what was said and how it was unfounded. And it doesn't, it's there was crime. I have the evidence of my daughter missing school. I have the evidence of me reporting to the police. I do have all, these records, so.
Okay, I gotta be honest, I'm having a hard time staying on track because you keep talking about, number one, self-sufficiency.
Okay, ma'am, I'm sorry that you're having a hard time staying on track. Is there some way I can communicate better with you?
So I can just kind of get my thought out.
Okay. So, ma'am, are you telling me that you're having a hard time communicating with me?
What?
Are you saying that you're having a hard time with our communication and you're not understanding me?
I'm trying to follow, and so my mind is kind of compartmentalizing.
Right. So, okay, so is this...
I'd like to finish my sentence, please.
Yes, sure.
Okay. Because if we're both talking, there's no communication happening. So,
right.
We're talking one thing about records for self-sufficiency, that would be TADBS. It's a grant. The domestic violence grant, that's what TADBS
Yes, I'm aware of that, ma'am.
The other thing would be records around child welfare. So if someone made an allegation, whether it be true or false, and it was assigned, the worker would come out and investigate whether there was merit to it. And then you're talking about law enforcement and a crime. Parental interference.
That relates to the DHS records. Yes, ma'am.
I didn't hear you because I was talking. What did you say?
I'm sorry, ma'am. You are talking a lot, so it's really confusing me right now. You're making it very difficult because you're trying to, in my mind, say that these are separate issues. And I hear what you're saying, and you're repeating yourself, and I've heard you say all the things you're saying right now. And so I would like to take a deep breath, if you don't mind, and I would like to speak a little bit more. Is that okay with you?
Sure, I wasn't able to finish the sentence, so sure.
You would like to finish your sentence? Okay.
That was just the last part.
Okay.
And I can appreciate that it's overwhelming because your life is your one life, so I appreciate that. It's just who does what around those kind of matters is what I'm trying to understand and kind of communicate to you. So the matter you were talking about, I believe you were talking about law enforcement and there being a crime that was committed about parental interference. That's a crime.
Correct.
So that would be addressed with law enforcement. If there's a parenting plan, I'm not an attorney, so I'll just give you a loose interpretation of my understanding. If a family judge has ordered parenting time and it's a custody matter between the parents, and one parent violates it, then that is parental interference, and it does need to go back to family court. It's difficult because people can be manipulative, and I totally understand that.
Right. Okay. So I would like to explain back to you so that you can understand what I've been able to understand from what you've explained for me, if you don't mind. Okay, so I 100% understand that there are different agencies within the government and Oregon State. I even can fully understand that these things are funded from tax funded versus state funding versus, or I mean from federal funding versus state funding. I understand these types of issues. And I am under the assumption that I'm speaking, like I would not be bothering to speak further and give you this much information if you were, well, actually I would. I was going to say if you were just a police officer or just my specific caseworker who I'm just, like Misty, I just have that one specific question about the records she sent me. But you are the governor's advocacy office, and every time I have a question like that's too, like they can't answer it, I'm told, you can always call the governor's advocacy office. So I'm, making it clear that I'm under the understanding, because other caseworkers and record request people have told me that I'm supposed, if I'm confused by their answer, or if I, like when I've explained the behavior that, when I was reporting to not only DHS caseworkers, but police about the criminal law codes. And then, so I'm explaining to you that I understand that. But my understanding is that these systems are supposed to work together to prevent child abuse, and that there are law codes to follow. So if a caseworker isn't concerned about TADVS records and the 10-year history of abuse with, there's documented evidence. I was told by caseworkers and like I went to be a foster parent. I had to go to like a one-day class for a family member, like, 15, 20 years ago. And it's been explained to me that these are all supposed to be documented and matter, and that is supposed to help prevent the communication between all these agencies is supposed to help prevent children from being abused. And so I, as a mandatory reporter, assumed that the person I would communicate with about there being a failure so bad in my case, I thought that was the Governor Advocacy Office. And so I'm trying to communicate and trying to get more and, answers to help, very sincerely to help prevent other children from having to experience, and other parents like myself who had to watch their children be abused and their rights not be followed and reported over and over. So I'm trying to prevent that from happening further in my community. And that's what I'm reporting on. And that's what I'm collecting information for. Which I thought.
And the beginning of our conversation. So that does take a different turn.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said. This phone, I can't hear very well on it because it's like an older. I just think the speaker quality isn't very well.
To our office was about missing pages of records you requested. So
that is one out of many reasons, ma'am, that I would like to speak to someone at the governor's advocacy office. But that is one thing that I have a question that can be answered, hopefully by Misty or Ben Johnson. Is that
okay? Yeah. Well, that's why because that's not what you can ask anything and bring up anything during our call, and as you're interacting with us, that I don't mind. It's just understanding what your ask is helps, because it was around those records. So initially, and that's what I understood. But if you're wanting to see broader, bigger change within the agency and how it conducts itself, I'm here for you. And I want to make sure that you're aware I can't do anything to change 2012 history of that period.
Right, that's a lawsuit issue, and I will be. That is my right, ma'am. I hope I don't say that. I'm sorry if this comes across as a threat. I promise you that is not how I mean it. When I say, I'm sorry if this comes across like a threatening way, or I don't mean it that way. I do understand that I am, like what happened to me and what I experienced. I do fully understand that my remedy or my outlet is to sue, and I do, yes, and I, that you then you win money, yes, I understand that, but because I actually care about the abuses that happen, and I'm trying to make sure that I'm reporting on, as like I said, I consider myself a mandatory reporter, and I've seen very disturbing behavior, which I have recordings, I so I was looking forward to having a conversation, which I realized that will be a very in-depth conversation in which I was going to be, bringing in a lot of records and all that, which, again, I plan to have with you in the future. So I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Okay. Then are you wanting someone to review the totality of your interactions with Oregon Department of Human Services?
I can myself very. So here's another subject I'd like to bring up with you, and I realize that you've said too many subjects overwhelms you, and I understand that.
I did not say that.
Or I'm sorry, you said I was speaking to.
No.
I'm. What did you say? I'm sorry. I'm not trying to misquote you.
I was just trying to keep, because when your message says was about records of self-sufficiency, and then we were talking about child welfare, so that introduces a whole new element, and then law enforcement, so I'm trying to just compartmentalize in my mind how they're all interrelated. It was confusing, but it didn't overwhelm me. I was just trying to understand what the conversation was.
Okay, so I apologize. It sounds to me like what you're saying is you were listening to your messages and you heard my message, which you're correct. It did just say, I gave you a case number, F as in Frank, or what, 43, And then I said I had spoke to Misty, and I actually do have a recording of what I said to you. I did kind of go into some detail, and I did plan to speak. I know, your message can't let me talk for 30 minutes, so I can only leave so much of a message. So I apologize. I thought that you were, I can understand that you thought that was all I was going to say, maybe when you heard that message. So I do apologize for, if you had to do something and you were busy and I took up too much here, or I don't mean to take up too much of your time, but so I will break it down for you and discuss it. As other, I know you have other people to help too. I do understand that I'm not your only client. So I did intend to speak further with you and share more records with you, put it all together.
Okay,
So
I can give you my email address if it would help to put it in writing.
It actually would not help. I actually, because of several issues with not having access to the internet working, not having, it does create a lot more problems if I can't communicate through the phone. But you can. It doesn't mean you can't email me ever and I won't get it. It just means it's better to communicate through the phone.
But I don't need to have a reason why. I've just suggested it.
Okay, thank you.
So no email. So maybe
well, no, I didn't say no emails. Okay.
If you can kind of say in a sentence or paragraph.
I'm sorry.
What I'd like to see happen from your work with our office, and then I know what direction I need to go.
Yeah. So I can understand that this phone call has taken up quite a bit of your time today and that you have things to do. So I would like to just, for you and for me, leave it at, we could let Misty or Ben Johnson answer the one question I have or have already expressed to you. And then depending on, I'll collect those records or see if there's, my intention was, do I need to collect more records or did they fall out of the envelope or is that all I was sent technically is the question. And then if the other 10 pages were just I kind of even assumed it was maybe just like the 3 checks, like a different format of the same information she sent me, but like the 3 checks, I was just getting more information. Or is there like an entire 10 pages that I'm not allowed to see? That would be interesting information for me.
Right, redacted records.
Well, I mean, 10 pages redacted where I don't know that there's 10 pages that have been redacted.
No, I understand, yeah.
Right.
It would be blacked out or it would be like just kind of a
right.
whited out looking piece of paper.
Right. And so if I could just have that one question answered.
Your records from child welfare as well?
I'm sorry, what?
You have requested your records from DHS child welfare as
well? I have 2 3-inch thick binders and 2-inch or 1.5-inch thick binders of records. It's just certain records. It was me asking for my records started in like 2013, and so you can imagine the changes that have happened. It's been coming in chunks and pieces. So I have, lots of specific records I do have, but specific records I don't have. So I'm just collecting things that I can see that should be in my, that I should probably have. And so I'm not, any records requesting, I can do that through your online portal, which I have no problem using that portal. These records ended up with me having to speak to other people because of, your system for those type of records, which I understand.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And I always intended to come back to the governor's advocacy office with those records, the police records, the school records, the reporting, all that, and show you how there was, children were abused and my rights were not followed. And I reported it over and over and over. And so it was quite, in order for me to help explain and give you maybe records you don't know about, which I assumed was of course, how would you know about my police records, right? So I can do that later at a later time and get back to you. And I know you said you'll be on vacation for a couple weeks.
See on your phone, that's my direct cell phone number.
I'm sorry, can I see? Oh, I can, yes. Set 971-720-0639.
Yes.
Okay.
And my name is Leslie.
Your name, I'm sorry, did you say Leslie? I couldn't.
I don't know how much in law enforcement records are things that are not Oregon Department of Human Services are going to be helpful. I don't know that I'm going to review all of that because of outside of our function and role, unless it relates to something being said by, like a record says, cross-reported to DHS.
Right.
Or went out with the worker, Megan, on this call. That type of thing. If it's related to DHS, I'll have a look at it. But those are not our records to be looking at and comparing. But I'll be happy to, I have a better idea of what you'd like to see happen and what you'd like to see us do at this office, and I can kind of approach it from that direction. I know that's a lot to ask because it's a lot of history.
Right. Well, my concerns run pretty deep with cases of like people who I know who are the same agency committed suicide because of the treatment and the harassment. And so this case is pretty deep. And I do understand that what you're telling me, hopefully I'm understanding this correct, the GAO office is specifically and an agency specifically meant for Department of Human Services related records, right? And cases. Right.
You broke up a little bit, but I think you said DHS related. Yeah.
Right. Your agency, your job specifically, your job. I don't know. That sounds rude, but you're about the Department of Human Services records in entirety, and them and their and how they behave and how they function.
This office is in place. Go ahead.
Oh, that was it. Sorry.
Okay. This office is in place to provide oversight and overview based on policy of Department of Human Services, and it reports